And we are here. We thank Councilor Flaherty and Councilor Flynn to host this meeting information session with us this evening. So we have a jam-packed 45-minute presentation on the Community Preservation Act, what the funding does, the process, our overview of the program, and we hope that you can all walk away learning a little bit more about what we do and how the funds have been used over the last 6 funding rounds. And I'll have the councilors kick us off and open up with some words for everyone. So Councilor Flaherty, I'll have you go first, and then Councilor Flynn, and then I'll jump in.
I work for him, just so you know. But it's a pleasure, obviously, to be here, and Dean does a phenomenal job. On behalf of the Community Preservation Act, Council President Flynn had appointed me to chair the CPC on the council, which is great. Exciting opportunity for this neighborhood and neighborhoods across the city. As a citywide city councilor, I go all over the town and beyond, and you see the results, frankly, of the investment and the commitment from the Community Preservation Act. And happy to announce that we're joined, obviously, by Ann Sanders, who's now the newest member of the committee for a 3-year term. Welcome. We have a neighbor on the committee that was just appointed after an exhaustive interviewing process, and the council had unanimously supported the new members. So we have 4 new members coming on that will join Dean and her team, as well as the administration members, to round out the committee, and they'll be spending time going through projects. So we've been saying, Council President Flynn and I have been saying that we don't think that there's enough engagement from the community. We don't know whether or not it's our civic associations or our friends groups know about this, and or how seamless it is working with Dean and her team to turn around an application. So we all know of, there's a park or a memorial or a Hero Square or a affordable housing opportunity that exists in our neighborhood, and it's just a matter of connecting the dots. Ordinary residents and citizens and taxpayers can participate in this. If you see something in your neighborhood that needs refurbishing or needs to be renovated, or if you have an idea of something that would work, if you could get a couple strategic partners, the Community Preservation Act is that program that can connect those opportunities. So I'm excited, obviously, to be here tonight to introduce Dean to the community and to work, obviously, with Council President Flynn and our elected colleagues in to identify areas that we see, wow, if we could just get an infusion of some additional funds. That's what the CPA and the CPC does for communities. And so around the neighborhood, Eddie can point to some, the St. Augustine's Chapel, and to see the beautiful sort of cast iron encasing on the fence and the wall repair was this, as one small example of one of the first projects that came out that was shovel ready, and an infusion of some very precious funds made a huge difference down at the St. Augustine's Chapel in the cemetery, preventing the wall from collapsing, and then beautifying that is just one sort of small example of the things that we could do in partnership with our housing partners and our open space and our historic preservation gurus. So if you're here, it's because you want to learn more about the program, and or you actually may already know of something that could be a good beneficiary of this program. So look forward to working with us and working with you, and collectively we can make it happen. So thank you, Dean, and I'll introduce, obviously, our neighbor and friend and my Council President Ed Flynn.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty, and thank you to Dean. And what I love about this program, Community Preservation Act, this program, it brings residents together, working with city officials. Myself and Michael have been in city government a long time. I don't know if I know a more professional and dedicated employee than Dean, and the professionalism and respect she shows all the applicants, not just here in South Boston, but across the city, is exceptional. But this brings out the best in the city, especially during these difficult times. There's a lot of great opportunities. I would encourage people from our neighborhood to apply. As Councilor Flaherty said, the numbers in South Boston are low. We just don't get the organizations applying for it. But if you are able to partner with different civic organizations or community groups, there's a lot of opportunities throughout South Boston. And I'm here to support you, here with my wife, Christian. But just want to say thank you to all the residents and neighbors throughout South Boston for coming out tonight. And so proud to represent this community, working alongside my neighbor here as well, Councilor Flaherty. Thank you, Nadine.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Nadine.
Thank you. So I'm going to do the heavy lifting tonight, and Rakia, our new manager of engagement and operations, I'm going to give her voice the rest today. And we'll jump through this presentation, but this is definitely going to be interactive. If you want to stop and ask any questions along the way, feel free to raise your hand. I'll take questions, but we'll do a full Q&A in the end. So, Rakia, I'll have you start off, and we'll run through what is the Community Preservation Act. We do have some upcoming community engagement events coming up next week into July and August as well. We are doing another in-person information session, and we do have some other virtual presentations coming up, so please visit our website. If you have friends or neighbors that want to learn more, please encourage them to visit our website and attend some of our events. Next slide. And we have the CPA team is now a team of 7. For a while we were a team of 3 and 4, but we have hired additional staff. Rakia, we have here is our new manager of engagement and operations. We have a new grant compliance manager, Amber Delgado, and Brendan Killarney is our contracts administrator. We have 2 historic preservation consultants, Jillian Lang and Courtney Whelan, and then we have an open space and recreation consultant, Rachel Guilfoyle. And so this makes up the CPA team. We're very small but very efficient. Next slide. So to give you the background and the timeline of community preservation, in 2000, mass legislature was passed for CPA, for cities and towns that wanted to have a ballot initiative and have it passed. In 2001, Boston did put a ballot initiative together for a 2% property surcharge, but it failed. But in 2016, it was very successful with a 1% property surcharge, with 74% of Boston residents voting yes to pass CPA. And from every year, we collect over $20 million in funding each year. And I'll talk a little bit more about how this funding all works. Next slide. And so the average property owner pays about, it's a 1% surcharge. Average property owner, low to moderate income seniors are exempt. Average homeowner pays about $41 a year. More than 20 million is collected annually. The funds can only be used for affordable housing, historic preservation, open space and recreation projects. There's also a match, a state match, from across the state, from real estate fees, and all these fees go into a trust fund, and every city and town that has adopted CPA gets a state match. And so that brings our pool of funds over $20 million a year. In our last funding round, we actually had $40 million in funding. Next slide, please. And so now we're going to highlight some funding, give you some funding round highlights. So CPA stats. So we have preserved over 100 historical buildings, sites, vessels, and artifacts. CPA funds have planted over 250 trees to help with Boston's tree canopy. We have rehabilitated and created over 80 playgrounds and recreational spaces. We have created urban farms and community gardens. We have preserved and created nearly 1,700 units of affordable housing. This includes home ownership units. We have supported housing for veterans, seniors, and folks experiencing homelessness. And we've also funded over $20 million to help with 2 programs that support first-time home ownership and displacement. Next slide, please. So to date, from 2018 to 2023, we have funded 293 projects, awarded over $157 million in funding, supported 46 affordable housing projects, 112 open space and recreation projects, and 135 historic preservation projects. And so if you see this little construction sign that says "Thank you, residents of Boston," that is a CPA project that's being worked on that we have funded throughout the city. We also have a great interactive map on our website. If you want to learn about all the projects that we have funded, it's a great interactive map. You can hover over the dots on the map. It'll give you a description and the funding amount for all the projects that we have funded from 2018 to 2023. So please go out and visit our website and check out this really, really great tool. Next slide. And so here's just a breakdown of over the years of how our funding has been broken down. I mentioned our last funding round that we just wrapped up in 2023. It was a 6th year of funding. We funded 56 projects. in 2023, awarding over $40 million. We initially had 73 applications that was presented to the Community Preservation Committee, and they narrowed that down to the 56 projects that were funded. And so it was over $50 million in funding requests that came in. Next slide. And we're going to highlight some projects that we funded throughout over the years. And so first I want to talk about what is the area median income, just because I want to talk about some of the affordable housing projects. But the AMI is the benchmark used to determining income eligibility. It's called the area median income. And since each market area has different living costs and income levels, the AMI is based on where you live and the household size. So for a family of 4, it's earning 80% AMI. That's over $111,000 each year. For a 4-person household earning 30% AMI, that's about $42,000 a year. CPA supports housing up to 100% AMI, and that's a 4-person household earning over $140,000 a year. And I highlight this because in a lot of the housing projects that we support within the CPA program, the developments, we are buying down the affordability in these new developments. We are not supporting the full development because development costs are extremely high. So we cover $2 million and $3 million to buy down 14 units, 11 units, to make them more deeper affordable, bringing market rate units down to 80% AMI, 60% AMI, 30% AMI, allowing veterans housing, artists living spaces. So I just wanted to point that out as we highlight some of the affordable housing projects that we cover. And so one program that we have covered through the CPA is the One Boston program. It's interest write-down, and it also helps with down payment assistance. This was funded through the Boston Home Center, which was a city department that did apply for funding, and we have funded them over $12 million. Next slide, please. And so from as of April 2023, this first-time home buyers program has helped 254 first-time home buyers, and it has given over $4 million in down payment assistance and over $3 million in interest subsidy. So really writing down that interest subsidy and allowing folks to be able to buy within the city of Boston. So this has been a really popular program, and they will probably continue to come in for CPA funds. Next slide. We've also funded the Acquisition Opportunity Program. This is also funding that's requested through the Mayor's Office of Housing. We've given this program over $14 million. This is an anti-displacement program. It's provide funding to responsible developers to acquire occupied market rate units and convert them into deed restriction housing units to low and moderate income Bostonians, helping families be able to stay within their home and not have the properties really bought and really turned into luxury development. So this has been a very popular program as well that helps small developers. Next slide, please. We've also funded a program in, this is a new development in Jamaica Plain. We funded this $1.5 million. This is a big development of 202 units. And again, what CPA funds have done is help buy down some of the affordability that's going to happen in this space. Next slide. We've funded a Fountain Hill ownership project in Roxbury. Again, supporting 40 units, being able to buy down some of the affordability in this project as well. In Harrison Ave, Chinatown, we funded this project as well. This is also a new development, 85 affordable rental units, and the ranges of the AMIs are between 30 and 80% AMI. Next slide. And Brook House, Olmsted Village, a home ownership unit within Mattapan. Again, helping to buy down some of the affordable units. This is a senior residence development that's being, and we partially fund this new construction. And then this was recently in McDevitt Senior Homes in South Boston. This was awarded $2.5 million in the 2023 funding round. We helped to partially fund this new development for 36 units of affordable senior rental. And this project will include 35 units of affordable housing for people aged 62 and over. Next slide. We've also done the Kearsarge Anchor. This was actually, we did this event last summer, but we awarded and refurbished this. This is a historic preservation project. And kind kind of replaced some of the old deteriorated concrete and refurbished and helped refurbish this within the in South Boston. And so this was funded. That's okay. We also did the Congress Street. Next slide, you can go to the next one. Congress Street Fire Station. This was actually funded 3 times. This is a historic preservation project, but we restored the 1891 fire station from injury, loss, and destruction, and to really help kind of restore the rear elevations and some kind of structural work within this space. Next slide. We've also did the Schooner Roadway, so we not only do historic preservation buildings, but we also do vessels. And we funded this Schooner Roadway to help rehabilitate this vessel. We funded it 3 times. They run a really great program, educational program with the students at BPS. And so this is just another source of funding our historic preservation funds can be used for. Next slide. Union Church is also a historical church that we have funded in the South End. And so this was funded twice to preserve and some drainage system and restoration for the exterior parts of the building. And so for a lot of historic preservation projects, we focus on the exterior. And then next slide, St. Augustine Historical Chapel. As Councilor Flaherty had highlighted, we funded this in 2018 to the restoration of the fence and gates and paths. And so this was also a South Boston project that was funded from CPA. Next slide. Lena Park Playground, again, just highlighting before and after. This was vacant land, and they were awarded $600,000 to create this new playground within Dorchester. Next slide. Bernard Place Park. This was a vacant land, and the community group came together and worked with a community outreach group called COG. They were funded twice to create the beautiful Bernard Place Park in South Boston. Chin Park Placemaking in Chinatown was also highlighted here. So again, we'll skip through. And so Cripe Park in South End. So just highlighting some of the really great projects that we've done throughout the city. And so next we'll talk about the program evaluations and analysis. So we have just completed a new FY23, an FY 5-year community preservation plan that will help guide the community preservation program for the next 5 years. And so we encourage you to please visit our website. This plan will help kind of decide how to allocate our funding, working with the committee and how our allocations and our funding criteria. So this plan highlights a really great amount of work and input from the Community Preservation Committee as well as from members of the community. Next slide. The overall goal is to kind of prioritize funding projects that further equity, addressing needs in the city's historically underserved neighborhoods. Another one of the goals is kind of to continue to establish a CPA funding allocation formula annually to help guide the CPC recommendations. So I'm not going to cover all of the goals, but we encourage you to please visit our plan and learn a little bit more. And again, we have covered funding analysis that's also within the plan. Again, please visit the plan and you can see all of this analysis. I won't go through all of them. Here's a breakdown, though, and this is a slide of all the projects that have been funded throughout the neighborhoods throughout the city of Boston. And as you can see, Dorchester, Roxbury, Jamaica Plain, Back Bay, and East Boston are our top 5 funded neighborhoods. And as you can see, South Boston has 12 projects. So that's why we're kind of out this round, kind of engaging everyone throughout the neighborhoods, really doing this presentation. We would like to see all the neighborhoods in double digits and really encouraging folks and educating folks about how CPA funds works and how they can apply and what kind of projects they can apply for to create it within their neighborhoods. But this is just a full breakdown of how our funding has been spent throughout 2018 to 2023. The funding percentages, as you can see here, is 53% of our funds have gone to affordable housing, 23% have gone to historic preservation, and 24% have gone to open space and recreation. However, if you look at the project percentage, you can see affordable housing is at 16%, historic preservation is at 46%, open space is at 38%. So the committee has made a decision to allocate majority of the CPA funds to affordable housing because it is a bigger need within the city, and so that they have made that decision to do that funding allocation. They can make that change that at any time they want, but at this point in time, the focus has been allocating majority of the funds to affordable housing. Next slide. And so I'll talk a little bit more about the statute in Chapter 44B, but I also want to highlight this little map over here. This map highlights, and I don't think I've done an updated one, but this highlights all the cities and towns across Massachusetts that have adopted CPA. And so they also get a part of the state match that I highlighted in the beginning of the presentation, but 10% of the funds must be spent under Chapter 44B under the statute in every category every year. So in historic preservation, affordable housing, open space, and recreation, after that 10%, the committee can then decide how they want to allocate the funds, and as what they have decided is giving affordable housing 50%, historic preservation 20%, open space and rec 20%, and then having a 10% reserve. Question?
Yeah. What do you mean by affordable housing? What is the dollar amount you're talking about?
So affordable housing. So when we talk about affordable housing, it's really creating housing, affordable housing music for anyone that's spending more than 30% of their income on housing. So our AMI level, the CPA can fund only up to 100% AMI. So we try to buy down the AMI levels in new developments. So we help support housing levels from 100% AMI and down as low as to 30% AMI.
So a person making less than $30K a year, would they qualify for any of this?
Would they qualify for any of the developments that are being created? So in the beginning of the presentation, I don't know if you might not have been here, I had discussed regarding what we do, the new housing developments that are created. Our funds, developers apply for those funds, and our money is used to buy down some of the units within those new developments to make them more affordable to low and moderate income renters or homeowners. So that's how our money is used. We don't build the total developments, we help buy down the units, and folks will then apply through lottery system or apply through a mortgage program in order to get the home ownership units that we help developers create.
Okay, so most people in my union make less than $30 a year. They cannot afford a mortgage. Okay, they can't afford rent. Years ago, it used to be 1 week's pay for 1 month's rent. That used to be the guideline, but that seems to have gone by that's gone. And as far as your open space, you're swallowing up Moakley Park, which is a green space, open space, totally against what the president is pushing for. We can't, once you take a piece, the whole thing's gone. That's the way it works in the city. So I don't know how any of you can stand in front of us and say you are for open space and green space and clean air. I see most of the city, big administrators, climate change deniers. I see them mostly talking, but what they talk about are just words.
Yeah.
The actions speak louder than words.
So what we do in the CPA program, we help those who have vacant lands, city-owned lands that are vacant lands. We help organizations we've helped rehabilitate and create over 80 playgrounds and community gardens through the CPA program. The CPA program, this funding has only been around for 6 years. And we have, within the 6 years, really helped try to create more open spaces, create more affordability, and preserve a lot of historical buildings. So I completely understand. I hear what you're saying in terms of things and concerns. I absolutely hear you. But I also think our program is really trying to help within those areas to really help make better spaces, make housing more affordable, make home ownership more affordable. We have supported a home ownership program that I highlighted previously before that has helped 254 first-time homeowners who didn't have the opportunity to buy now have down payment assistance and a mortgage, a rate that's written down in a mortgage to be able to buy a home. So we are making a difference. It's not as big as we want to, but I think this is only 6 years. And so I think over time we'll continue to make more progress, I hope. question here.
So the spaces that you do create, like the playgrounds and park spaces, then who maintains that, and how do you visit?
So the Parks Department can also apply for funding. So a lot of some of the park playgrounds that we have funded, there are local community groups like yourself. It might be your local park. They go to the Parks Department to say, we are considering applying for CPA funds. If we apply for CPA funds, will you take on the funds to do the work? They would have to give you a letter of authorization, but the Park Department will take the CPA funds, do the work, and they will be responsible for maintaining the space. Yes, there are community groups that we build a new playground for, a new community garden for, like Bernard Pace Park that I highlighted. They had to show us that they have an annual maintenance plan and that they have fundraising, so they have to show us how they are going to maintain the space because, and as I jump back to my slide, we don't cover maintenance and operations and programming. So those are some critical things that folks have to be able to show us. Up to 5% of our funds can be spent on administrative costs. We cover capital projects only, as you can say, so no maintenance, no operations, so that folks really do have to show us how they're going to be able to sustain that. And furthermore, whatever project that we fund, it's a 15-year commitment. Whatever is there has to be maintained and sustained for 15 years. Our grant compliance manager will be going out annually to check on the spaces and to ensure that they're still there, that they're being maintained, and so we will be monitoring those as well. Recipients can be public, private entities, nonprofits, and for-profit organizations. CPA funds can cover acquisitions, creations, preservation, rehabilitation, restoration, and support. Next slide, please. And so I'll talk a little bit more about these in our future slides, so I'll just skip through. So I want to be respectful of time, but I do want to highlight what we don't cover again. Maintenance programming. We do not do interior work. We only focus on exterior capital work, and that was a decision that was a CPA policy that was made by the committee. So a lot of historical buildings that we fund, we only focus on the exterior parts of those buildings and no interior work. We can't touch anything with religious iconography. We can do no acquisition.
What does that mean?
So a window that has a symbol of Jesus or a cross, it just has to be a plain stainless glass window with just no religious iconography. Yeah. No artificial turf or athletic fields, no horse or dog racing or land for a stadium, gymnasium, or similar structure. So basically, whoever applies for our funds, we can't violate the Anti-Aid Amendment. So our public funds must be used to enhance a public benefit. It cannot be used to enhance a private benefit. So that's anyone that's coming in for our funding, you really have to show what the public benefit is, including a lot of our historic preservation projects in churches. Like, are you running a soup kitchen? Are you having AA meetings? Do you run a clothes drive? Are you running a community space that the community groups can use? So we are looking for a bigger public impact and community impact in these spaces. Next slide. I highlighted the grant agreement. So again, projects that are funded, this is a legally binding agreement. So they either do a MOA or a grant agreement. So an MOA is usually done with the scenario that I stated with the Parks Department and a neighborhood group. So it is, if a group applies, this is a requirement. They have 24 months to finish their projects. Affordable housing has a long more time because the development takes a long more time, so they have about 5 years to complete their projects. And so we do have clawback provisions if folks do not keep the 15-year commitment to the projects that we fund. Next slide. Next, I want to talk about who's involved. So there's the mayor, who appoints 5 of the committee members from specific boards and commission. The mayor also reviews the recommended slate of projects. Then there's the city council. They appoint 4 community residents to the CPA committee. The city council makes the final decisions to fund the CPA projects. And then the CPA committee are the 9 members. They create the annual plan, they approve the yearly budget, they review the project proposals, and make the funding recommendations to the mayor and the city council. And then we, the CPA staff, we manage the CPA program, we assist the CPA committee, we work closely with the mayor, applicants, and city council. We really want to ensure folks are educated and understand how to apply for CPA funds and really try to help them through the process. Next slide. Affordable housing, again, visit our plan. We have goals around affordable housing. And so our next slide. So the allowable uses for affordable housing are acquisition, creation, support, preservation, and rehabilitation and restoration. And rehabilitation can only happen if the property was initially built with CPA funds. So we can't rehabilitate existing kind of affordable housing. It has to already have been built with CPA funds. So again, I highlighted the first-time homebuyers program, which our funding can support, the anti-displacement program that helps small developers be able to buy units and keep folks within their properties, and then the creation of affordable rentals, and then the creation of affordable home ownership. These are some of the examples of what our funds have been able to do with affordable housing. Next slide. And so if you are looking to apply for affordable housing, you must connect with the Mayor's Office of Housing, especially if you're a first-time developer. We issue a joint RFP with the Mayor's Office of Housing. So each funding round, there are specific requirements for our funding, and folks can receive funding from CPA, Mayor's Office of Housing, and the Neighborhood Housing Trust. You must have, a lot of folks that are already coming to us, they already have a development plan. They've already gone through a process. They already have a full team. They're really coming to us to kind of fill a gap within their funding as a funding source to help with their development. Housing requires really, really large financing to get a project done. So really, working with folks, we ask them, do you have enough financing? Really talking to the Mayor's Office of Housing to see if you have all the money together before really coming in. Are you building a rental or home ownership units? Are you acquiring land to build housing? So funds can be used to preserve affordability, but funds cannot be used to renovate previous housing, as I stated before. And so next slide. And so if you wanted to talk about development at glance, so folks that are already coming to us, they really have a development design. They've gone through kind of their community and public process. They're now responding to the RFP. There is a significant evaluation that happens with the Mayor's Office of Housing, and CPA sits in on that evaluation as well for them to be awarded city funds for development. Next slide. So I'll next talk about historic preservation. I won't go through all the goals, but if you visit our plan, you can see our historic preservation goals. But next slide. For historic preservation, these are the allowable uses. We can do acquisition, rehabilitation, and restoration and preservation. So we have covered, rehabilitated and restored buildings, structures, vessels, as I highlighted, properties, which are like museums and public spaces, and historical kind of properties. And we have done documents and artifacts. So a lot of projects that apply for historic preservation. Yes.
The historic preservation, how would that work on a building?
So the building would have to be on the state and national register. And so if they're looking to do restoration of the building, if they want to do masonry, roof work, windows, facade, ADA accessibility, those are type of the things that we have covered so far under historic preservation.
What about if you have an application in to make one of these buildings either a national or state historic site? Is that honored by you people?
So if your project is listed in the MACRIS, which is a Massachusetts kind of database of historical spaces, we can bring your project before the Boston Landmark Commission for them to kind of highlight your project and give it a designation in order for you to apply for CPA funds. We have done that for certain projects. Now, if it's in MACRIS, so we would have you talk to our historic preservation consultant to learn a little bit more about the space. We will do some research, and then we will work with the applicant going forward to see what their next steps could be, and also understanding the allowable uses of what you would be doing with that historical building.
Okay, and where is that person located?
So I will, on our website, we have a list of all our staff members, and so we have 2 historic preservation consultants. You can also reach out to myself. I am the director of the program, and so we can definitely give you some help.
I will, thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Next slide, please. And so here are requirements for historic preservation application. If you are looking to apply for affordable housing, site control is our number one rule, you must have ownership of the site or a long-term lease agreement that shows us that you will be able to have access to the site for 15 years, or that owner of that property is giving you permission. Historic designation, if your site is not listed on the state and national register, BLC designation must be obtained, and we can help projects do that. Do you have we also look for, do you have documentations or studies, so historic documents, a preservation plan, conditions assessment, a capital master plan. These are some things that just help our historic preservation consultants understand a little bit more about your historical space. Are you applying for design, acquisition, preservation, rehabilitation, or restoration? We don't cover design only. We do cover design, but 70% of your project must be a construction component. We don't do, previously in the first couple years of the program, we did do some design only work, but you must have, a bulk of your project must be a construction capital project. You must know what is the funding amount you're looking to request. You will need some professional estimates, so really connecting with some resources or folks that can offer you some pro bono estimates will also be good. We also try to help applicants be able to get that resource as well. Do you have the readiness to proceed? Where are you in your planning process? Do you have a committed team of individuals that you are working with? Really applying for CPA really takes a good team of folks to really go through the process. There is paperwork, we may come back to you when we are working with the committee around rephrasing your budget, moving your project from a phase 1 if you can't get all of your funding. So really having a good committed team to work with you is also important. And do you have a long-term maintenance long-term maintenance and revenue plan? Again, do you have fundraising or really working with your group to fundraise to understand how you're going to maintain that space, because we don't cover maintenance. And again, it is a 15-year commitment to whatever we fund. Do you have the capacity to manage? Will you need a fiscal agent? So these are all critical questions that we ask folks to really consider when applying for CPA funds. And the main one is, what is your public or community impact? What is your big benefit of the project that you are funding? Next slide, please. Open space and recreation. Again, visit our plan. It's on our website. I won't go through all of this, but to cover open space and recreation, next slide. Here are some of the allowable uses for open space. And so we use open space and recreation as a big term together, but they are two separate things. Open space really covers items like pond frontage, tree planting, restoration of a shoreline, really wetlands and conservation lands, creating trails. Those are really kind of open space and recreation projects. And so, and under open spaces, like, we can make capital improvements and extraordinary repairs to recreational space only if it was acquired with CPA funds. And so for recreational spaces, we can do all of these: acquisition, creation, preservation, and rehabilitation and restoration. And recreation spaces are usually community gardens and urban farms. They're playgrounds, they're basketball courts and athletic fields. So these are all the kind of items that we can cover under open space and recreation. And then again, we cover no artificial turf. That's really highlighted in Chapter 44B, so our funds cannot be used for any artificial turf. But this is all kind of the allowable uses under open space. Next slide. And so the same for historic preservation. These are a lot of the same requirements, so I'm not going to go through all of them, but I do want to highlight the second bullet, which is your project on public or private land? And are you working with the state or city agency, and have they approved your project? So this goes back to the example, as I was stating, there are community groups that come in that have a local park within their neighborhood that's owned by the Parks Department, that's owned by DCR, and it's really getting a letter of authorization from that city or state agency to say, hey, we really want to apply for CPA fundings for this park. Will you take the funds? Will you do the work? And do they have the capacity to take that project on to do the work? Because we will not turn over the funds to a small nonprofit group if it's a city or state-owned land. They will have to take on the funds to do the work. Again, I would say, stewardship, that's long-term maintenance, that's important. Again, I just want to keep reiterating that because it is a 15-year commitment to whatever we fund. And again, what is your public and community impact? So if you are creating a community garden, You do have to have hours that are open dusk till dawn. It has to have some type of component where the public can utilize the space. It cannot just be for a small private group only. You have to have some type of a public benefit within that space. Next slide. So if I had to walk through the steps of how you apply for CPA funds, step one will really be identifying your project, really talking to the CPA staff, visiting our website, attending an information session like this, really coming out to learn a little bit more. Step two would be completing an eligibility form. After you reviewed your CPA information, our website, attended our information session, you would discuss your project with the CPA staff and complete this required eligibility form. The eligibility form is not an application. It is a form that allows us to determine your eligibility. And that's how we can then move into step three, which is you would be invited in to complete a CPA application. And getting a CPA application is by invitation only. After we've kind of reviewed your eligibility form and determined if your project is eligible, we will invite you in to do an application to go in front of the Community Preservation Committee for consideration for funding. Step four is really your project is submitted in front of the Community Preservation Committee. They make funding recommendations to the mayor and the city council. So if I had to walk you through, for example, our 2023 funding round we just wrapped up, what we did is applications, eligibility forms were due in August, so August 31st. They were due last year. The staff, so we engaged throughout the summer and the spring to really get folks to submit by August 31st. We take the month of September to review all the eligibility forms. And we then invite folks in to do an application in October. They have 6 weeks to complete that application. And then we have public meetings with the committee from December to the second week in February. And they have public meetings to discuss all the projects that were submitted in for funding. And then they have a hearing in February to select, to recommend the projects to the mayor and the city council. The city council will hold a hearing in April and then approve the projects. And then we, by May and June, start to sign grant agreements and get money out the door, the first 30% out the door for folks to start their project. And then next.
Question?
Yes.
How many eligibility forms do you get that then go on to be invited for application?
Sure. So in our last funding round, we received over 100 eligibility forms. We narrowed them down to 76, 73, and 56 out of 73 were considered for funding. And 44 out of the 56 for the first time was given full funding that they came in and asked for. So we've really been making a lot of progress in our process and really reviewing applications and working with the committee.
Sorry, another question.
Yes.
Could I apply for funds to stop the destruction of Moakley Park under this plan?
No, you cannot.
Okay, why not?
You want to apply for funds to stop?
To stop the construction and the destruction. It's an open space the president said we're supposed to protect.
Yeah.
Supposed to protect all open green space, but the city, state, and federal government think it's fine to rip it up and take it and develop it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's fine. You know, I don't go along with the climate deniers.
Yeah.
You can see what's happening with the fires out of Canada coming down to us. We need more green space, open space, and trees to absorb this stuff and so we can breathe.
I agree.
But you know, it's just a continuously eating up of all of the green space and open space. Everybody just nods their head.
Yeah.
You know,
so what I can tell you what we've done, we've helped planted over 250 trees in CPA to help with the tree canopy. We've planted trees in the Escalon and cemeteries. Wherever folks have a project and they want to plant trees, we are here to help do that. Where I think you cannot do that is that's a city-owned land, right? So the site owner, as I stated in the slide that I have, site control is the number one thing that someone has to prove when they come into CPA funds. So if you were to apply, you would need to go to the city to get a letter of authorization to then stop there. So that scenario just would not work. I hear you if you want to say, you know, a development is coming in your neighborhood or something's coming, and you want to see more trees and you want to see more open space. Like, you can encourage and really show up and say like, well, there's CPA funds they can help with. You can apply to see if they can help create more green space or help with a vacant land or help make a park space next to that new development. So I don't have all the answers. I just know that what we are doing and how folks can apply for our funding. And so I hear you. But I'm just here to tell you what we do here at CPA and the benefits that the 1% surcharge that you, the taxpayers, are funding into this, how this money is being used, and for the last 6 years, what we've been able to do. And that's kind of my job here. And I'm sorry I can't save and have all the answers, but I have answers for this.
Yeah. But it could get an injunction. I could go to the courthouse and get an injunction to stop it.
That I don't know. That I don't know.
And on the development, I'm sorry, one final. A development that is already taking place now, we found out there's a building on the site that has historical significance. How could we stop this company from knocking down this particular building? You could. I don't know the right answer, but if there is some historical component, you could probably reach out to the Boston Landmarks Commission or the new Office of Historic Preservation, just to say that if they are aware of it or not aware of it. So I don't have an answer to what that scenario may be, but I'm sure folks within the city may have, and the first department I could think of when it comes to historic preservation is the new Office of Historic Preservation. But if you send me an email, I can try to see who may have the answers to that. But I just don't have that answer right now for you.
I think it was someone.
Okay. Yeah. So just to say, the funding round is now open. Our funding round is now open. Next slide. Please visit our How to Apply page. It's really, really a good tool. It breaks down for each section how to apply for CPA funding. And then the next slide, Rakia. And so we just want to say commitment matters. A lot of projects that come in and apply, they don't always get funding on the first or second or even third time. Sometimes they come in the fourth time and they consider funding. It is a competitive process, but the committee has not stopped anyone from reapplying if they have applied and didn't get funding. This funding is available every year, so reapplying is greatly encouraged. But we do have a new policy decision. Next slide. If you have received funding for 3 consecutive years, we are asking applicants, the committee has made a decision for applicants to take a year off. So that opens up room for new applicants to kind of come in for funding. And so we've asked them to reapply for the next following year. And then here's a list of our emails and the CPA team. We encourage you to visit our website. If you have any questions about, again, specific projects, we have historic preservation consultants, open space consultants. You can reach out to myself. I am the director of the program. And I don't know if I said that when I started the presentation, but I've been here through all 6 funding rounds, and I was also part of the CPA campaign that helped knocking on doors to ask folks to vote for CPA. So I've been on the outside and on the inside, so it's really great to see the work, all the great work that the program has been doing, and the great opportunities it has been giving to folks throughout the neighborhoods of Boston. And so now we're done. We'll open this for Q&A, and so whoever have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Yeah, I do have a question on the site issue again.
Yeah.
Kind of revisit that.
The site control?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, so if you have a project site and, for instance, you want to work on a building or a vacant land, are you the owner of that vacant? We need to know who owns that land, and if that owner needs to give you permission, or you need to have a long-term lease agreement with that owner, at least for 15 years. So if you show up to us and say, oh, I want to build on the site, the first thing we're going to say is, did the property owner give you permission? Do you have an MOU with that property owner that gives you the right to want to apply and build something on their land? And if you have an agreement with them, that's completely fine. We'll say, okay, you do have site control, then you can apply for CPA funds. But if you do not, then we can't move forward because we need permission.
Scenarios like he was bringing up, like we see things that are going on in our neighborhood.
Yeah. Yeah, so, well, in terms of CPA,
Yeah.
this is the rules for our allowable uses for us. Site control in our legal department, that's the first thing that we look for before a project can apply for funding. Any other questions? Over here.
Thank you.
And then
This was a ballot question?
This was a ballot initiative in 2016, and it was for folks asked for this 1% surcharge to create the CPA fund.
1% of real estate taxes?
Yes, property surcharge tax, yes.
Paid by residents and businesses?
Yes.
All real estate?
Yes, and the bulk of the money comes from a lot of the businesses.
Does every community in the state participate
Yes.
in this? Yeah.
Yes. If you are a homeowner, some low to moderate income owners are exempt. But if you are a homeowner, you would see this as a line item on your tax bill, and you would say Community Preservation Act.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just have two questions. A couple of the projects that I'm thinking of, two of them are on state grant. So how does that work? I would reach out to the state and see if they would accept the funds,
Yes.
and they would do the work.
They would, right. So we have an actual form. It's a letter of authorization. And so we would ask you to reach out to them. And if they're not aware of CPA funds, we're happy to talk to them to say, well, CPA fund is a grant program that can help with X, Y, and Z. But is it DCR? Do you know?
Yeah, so something similar to, so I know that South Boston doesn't apply for this money in great numbers.
Yeah.
So, but the Corsage Memorial that we did, remember that? You were there, right? I'm thinking about the Farragut statue because it's in tough shape. The maintenance part is a piece of it because you don't do maintenance, but I'm thinking if we could form the Friends of, and we would take care of the maintenance there. But the gentleman, Mr. Shore, who did the Corsage, I'm thinking he would be able to also restore that.
Yeah, and this statue is a historical, I'm sure.
Yeah. It wasn't supposed to be here. It's supposed to be somewhere else. It got dropped off, but there's that, and then I'm also thinking about the bandstand, the Harry Elman bandstand down at Marine Park. So beautiful brick structure. To be able to put that back to its original and then maybe start having concerts on Marine Park again would be a lovely thing. The other thing is the wrought iron fencing around Medal of Honor Park. So the prior president of the City Point Neighborhood Association got the existing fencing, but it would be nice to see if we can continue that down. So those are the three projects that I'm kind of
thinking
mulling around. So Medal of Honor Park is city, the bandstand, and the Farragut statue is state.
So I know Medal of Honor had came in before, and I think the reason why we paused on Medal of Honor was because I think there was some developer funds that were going to be used towards that space already. And so what CPA also has to be careful of is like, if a project's already maybe being considered for other funding or has funding within the capital plan, city capital plan, we have to be careful that we're not supplanting funds. So if there's work in the pipeline, that sort of thing that the Parks Department or the department can tell us about what funding may be coming in. But I think that was one of the reasons why we had stopped, because there was potentially some funds that were already going to be used. But for DCR, we have worked with DCR on several projects actually within that's been funded, and so they would have to agree to take on the funds and be able to do the work within that 24-month period. And usually how that works too with DCR, we usually give them a portion of the funds up front and hold 10% until the work is done.
Okay. How would I find out who the developer is for M Street Park? Billy, is that Edison?
Yes. Well, 776.
Yeah, that agreed to do the...
There's a requirement in our BPDA documentation that calls for an investment. Give me the address here, but I think it's $1 million for capital work.
Okay, but it's not earmarked specifically for the fencing, right?
I don't believe it's earmarked for the fence, and it's triggered by It may be the first building permit for a new building.
Okay, I'll look that up in the community benefits center. So thank you. It looks like my goal is to talk to DCR then.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. They can talk to us.
What if it's Massport?
So I haven't dealt with Massport before, but the same rules will kind of apply. It's really saying, you know, this is your land. Are you willing to give a 15-year MOU for a space to be developed and built? And I think, you know, they're understanding who would kind of maintain the space. How would that work? So some things can get a little complicated and tricky, especially with some departments wanting to know, like, who's really going to do the maintenance and can we manage the maintenance? So it takes a lot of work and kind of a commitment to get some of those across.
One more question, please. I think there's just 2 buildings in South Boston that actually have the name South Boston on it. And one is the corner of E and West Broadway, the first South Boston Savings Bank. Mm-hmm. And the second building is the South Boston Market that Goodwill is in. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the only 2 that I can think of that is around. How do we keep those as a reminder of what this place was at one time? Because John Henry has already named the Boston Globe area as Seaport South. So it just seems like we're coming into one big horseshoe, and we will be absorbed as the gigantic Seaport area. I mean, just looking at this, what's happening, you know, hotels coming up, you know, and I know the Boston Development has, but under the BRA, the plans are still on the 6th or 8th floor, I don't know which floor it's on now, for the World's Fair in the early 60s, which was fought against by Louisa Hicks. And they were going to take the yacht clubs, not take them down, but build over them a huge hotels on the waterfront. Now, those were never taken off the table. That's still there. So, I mean, it just looks like to us that we're being just squeezed out, you know, like the under 30,000 a year, you're being, you know, hit to Fall River.
Yeah.
You know.
So again, I'm sorry, I don't work for BPDA,
Yeah.
so I don't have
Go
control
on.
over the
Yeah.
planning and what's being done. I can only share what CPA is doing and what we're able to do. So I can't really speak to that larger. I mean, if there is a historic preservation building, you want to restore something or restore some parts of it, CPA funds can be used to do that. Again, depending on who owns the building, who owns that space, are they agreeing to that, to the terms of that? So that would be really important. But again, what I've highlighted here is what the program has been doing for the last 6 years, and so that's what I can speak to at this time.
Thank you.
I might be able to help with that.
Yeah.
The plans for the 1960 World's Fair, they were conceptual. There's no plan to do any of that stuff today.
Really, not just the government.
Well, there may be mock-up someplace of what may have occurred, but that's not a current proposal, to be sure. And as far as the buildings that have South Boston on the facades, the age of those buildings, as you have explained them, any changes there would be subject to the Boston Landmarks Commission without equivocation. And I don't know that there's any plan to tear those buildings down. But Boston Landmarks would be the place where you would make a case if, in fact, it's determined somebody wants to do something to it. And might I ask a question of Joe? I'm sorry to do all this, but
That's okay.
I'm not. Is there a plan to invade Moakley Park and create?
Yeah. Jacob Boulevard as well.
You guys are.
Wait,
Dorchester.
you mean the Dorchester City thing?
Yeah.
But
Well,
that's
it's not
not in
Moakley.
the park, right?
Moakley Park goes up to Columbia Circle.
But I think that development's on the UMass site.
Yeah.
No, the beach is
Yeah.
part of it too. It's on one of your sites. Or maybe it's on the site of the state. It's already been up, they've had meetings already on it.
Yeah.
In Dorchester.
The old expo?
Yeah.
Parking lots? Yeah.
That's I think that's UMass owned.
Yeah, I'd be
All I
astounded.
know is
I don't think they're
smoking
taking
pot, but I don't know,
part.
how do I know?
Yeah.
Well, I'd be astounded if there's a plan to invade.
Yeah, all
Oakley
those
Park.
fields.
Yeah, I think I've been hearing that they want to restore Moakley Park and do renovations to Moakley. I haven't heard of Moakley Park being taken. It's more renovations, and actually they're I think raising money to kind of do the like a capital improvements.
And for climate resilience.
Yeah. So I think that they're really trying to renovate that park space, save it for sure.
It's an anti-flood zone.
Right.
That's what it is.
And they're trying to make it more better, so it's not. So to preserve it and elevate certain features of it.
That, if I may, that would be a resiliency plan.
Yes.
From Oakley Park. But
Yeah.
I certainly don't believe there's any plan by
Yeah.
the city to create any kind of development down there.
Yeah.
I would imagine that the mitigation of whatever's built at Dorchester City might help improve Oakley Park too, if you wanted.
I'm not familiar with what their requirements are, but probably so.
It's open space that shouldn't be touched, I know that.
Yeah, I
That's the
definitely
president's
think.
rule.
Yeah, I definitely think Moakley Park will be there. There is a plan to
Improve it.
improve it. Is what I've been.
Touch it to improve it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's taken care of itself for over 300 years, so.
Well, it may be renamed because the history, I believe it was Columbus Park and then it was McNary Park. And now it's
No, it's open
our late
park.
great Congressman Joe Moakley's Park. So
Yeah. It's a significant,
Huge.
huge part to the neighborhood. Yeah.
To be
So
sure.
I don't think there's
It's a great
any.
asset.
My dog goes there.
Yeah.
Play catch with my last dog.
I don't want to get off Oakley Park, but I think what Joe's talking about is that the city does have a plan to redo Oakley Park, and some of it is a bit excessive and over the top.
Oh.
Insofar as actually leaving
Bingo.
green space. Like, not every bit of it has to be touched and developed, if you
Yeah.
will.
Okay.
So I think that's what he was talking about. But I want to get back to, like, the South Boston Savings Bank.
Yeah.
I'll be done in a minute. So like the South Boston Savings
So when
Bank.
I ask a question, it's because I'm learning something, so there you go.
Do you want to go?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Ladies first.
Be nice, I'll tell Gina.
Uh-oh.
All right, so the South Boston Savings Bank building, and so I'm wondering, so that's out for bid right now, it's up for sale and it's up for bid.
Okay.
And I'm wondering and how would this work with CPA funds? That I'm sure is going to be a historical building, but what I'm looking for is a building or a piece of land that we can build a South Boston museum on, because we're being steamrolled like the West End, and pretty soon we won't exist as we currently know South Boston. So with that, we want to preserve and build something that generations can go into, and so that's in the back of my mind. So we may or may not be able to get developers to agree to that. I know down at Washington Village, I think Bob Allison was promised some space down there, but I'm talking a full-fledged big museum. So if we can partner with a developer and get CPA funds, is that something that is doable? Or do we just go for CPA funds to help us like buy a building or buy a piece of land? How does that
So
work?
you would definitely need some other funding resources, because the largest amount CPA funds usually gives is towards housing, and it's like a $3 million ask. If you wanted to build that's a huge ask, and that would be a significant allocation from our funding to do that. So we would be a portion of maybe a funding source to preserve a historical building, to help create a museum, and we would only focus on doing some exterior work to that building only. You would have to figure out who would do interior work, who would do a lot of other things to create that kind of internal museum space.
Okay, but the first step would be to get a funding source, whether it be
Yeah.
well, the first step would be land control.
Yes. Who owns, like, what historical building, or who owns it, who would you be working with, who would own that like who would partner with you and the community to kind of do that is kind of really like a first phase, right? Because our funding source would be very, very small in terms of what you may, depending on what you want to do, you may need additional other funding sources to kind of create that, and you would probably need someone that has financing to help.
Okay, so we could, Kate, while you're here, we could actually partner up with all of the civic groups in South Boston, right? And then work from there insofar as trying to find funding. So we could actually come together as one big group to work on this project.
You could. Again, for us, when anyone comes to us, it's really being able to answer all the questions under our allowable uses.
Yeah.
And if you can really answer that, we can see past all the questions that we have that allows funding, then we can talk through and consider what can be considered something that we can fund, that we can bring in front of the committee to consider for funding.
Is it too late to ask Edison Development to have a little museum within the
Yeah, respectfully, there is a plan to have space such as that on site in one of the turbine halls.
Permanently, so that it doesn't turn over, like it could be a permanent structure?
I think it would be sort of rotating, but I'm not the correct person to ask.
Yeah, I thought it was rotating too.
But
I was thinking Pappas Way.
I'm sorry, and then you're next. Yes.
Hi, John Pigatowski. I'm a board member on the Andrew Square Civic Association and development co-chair. Just to toss out quickly, the Moakley Park Vision Plan that the City of Boston, they've reached out to the Andrew Square Civic Association, the Mary Ellen McCormick group as well, and it's been an ongoing process. It started out with multiple surveys on what input the community would like to see down there and whatnot. Allison Perlman from the City of Boston is running the show for that. Basically, if you go to cityofboston.gov/Moakley/park/plan, you'll see the whole layout. So phase one will be concentrated on the resiliency, the flood resiliency, climate resiliency aspect of things. The overall encompassing plan, as probably you're aware of, is that Shore Road basically disappears. The park and the beach merge or meld together per se, with buffer zones and land elevations to meet the resiliency demands on the 100-year floodplain maps and what the CFROD is dictating now from the City of Boston. But there's a vast input from Andrew Square Civic and Mary Ellen McCormick as to what they'd like to see there, but nothing was ever privatized or no building. Mostly everything is recreational facilities, green space open, picnic areas, lots of trees were one of the things, new plantings and whatnot. But again, if you go to cityofboston.gov/Moakley-park-plan, you'll see everything there. And
so the road will be taken. That's in front of what used to be what the state police are now. That
correct.
Road is all going to be taken.
It all becomes
Day Boulevard in that location.
right.
Day Boulevard. So
the park and the beach meld and become one per se. And then, you know, Columbia Road still.
Respectfully, all for resiliency purposes, not to set it up for any kind of commercial development.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know if the state's approved that. I haven't heard that the state has approved taking Day Boulevard.
That kind of project.
I don't think it's at that level.
Right, that's correct.
We could help with components of it.
Yeah.
So if they wanted to plant trees, if they wanted to create a playground within that space, they could apply for CPA.
Part of their
Yeah. So if they wanted to rehabilitate and they needed other funding sources, we could be one of many funding sources that could go into components. Yeah. Yeah.
And Luann brings up a very valid point. I'm very familiar as I work. I'm project manager on Washington Village. We were recently discussing historical space for Mr. Allison himself. And so it's not forgotten, but with the next bigger projects coming up down on Dorchester Ave, plenty of historical significance from Civil War times, Alger Iron Works manufacturing cannons, cannonballs back from Civil War days. And again, there's a lot of historical significance on up and coming development on Dot Ave, whether it be from national development, core investments, but it's worth reaching out to the developers to recognize what is of importance in the community.
So all the traffic will go right by the project then? Up at the circle, they'll have to come down?
Seemingly, if it's,
Wow.
if it's
That's a lot of
accepted.
evolution.
I mean, it's still in the initial planning, and I mean, it's got to go, there's no BPDAs, no zoning approvals yet, and obviously that's state, and so it's...
Joe, that's all for survival, that's not for any other purpose. That's
Right.
Protect the asset.
Right.
So I just
So
want to be
they said.
respectful of everyone here and just, I'm so sorry. Go ahead. I want to take your question.
It's all learning for me. Someone brought up the Edison project, and I'm wondering if you would be involved with, there's going to be a lot of buildings put up with apartments. And would you get involved at all with trying to get affordable housing to some of those?
If that
you're talking
developer,
about thousands of
if that
apartments.
developer came in and applied for CPA funds, so the developer would have to come in and respond to the RFP. So we don't, what we don't do is,
Go to them.
yeah, we don't go to
Randomly
people.
go to developers
Yeah,
and
we,
say-
yeah.
They have to come-
Usually they are responsive to our RFP, and if they're looking for an additional funding source, and we are one of three funding sources that they can receive. There's a neighborhood housing trust, there's money from the Mayor's Office of Housing, they have a funding, and then there's CPA. And so if the developer, and then, they would also have to go to the state to get additional. So there's money financing components as well as going to the bank. There's many components that developers use to kind of help finance their projects. But a lot of the requirements and ours would be, are you building affordable housing? Taking our funds will require you to build some deeper affordability within your development.
So if our community leaders went to the developers and asked for so many, then
That's already occurred.
the developer could go to you from representing the community leaders, could get money that way?
Yes, if they needed an additional funding source. I don't know if the project's already fully financed or funded already.
It's a 10-year
Well,
project.
I'm here as a resident,
Yes.
curious about all of this, but I can't answer some of these questions. I'm one of the lawyers that works on that program. Phase 1 has been approved by the city. Housing is not in Phase 1. Housing is in Phase 2. I believe that there are present approvals for up to 635 residential units, a combination of rental and for sale. And we have committed to 17% affordable at different rates that have gone through the city process.
That's in writing now.
Oh, yes, yeah, that's in
And
the,
that's part of the parking that we...
all of that, that's all in our BPDA
120
documents.
parking spaces
Yeah,
for South Boston people.
yeah, there'll be, my memory is there'll be 100 parking spaces.
I have it in writing for 120.
Yeah, it's
Well,
in-
I'm sorry, whatever the number is, but
That's
that's,
quote, I have it for the phone that you can get it from.
well, you won't be looking for a parking spot then.
Not getting, but there's a lot of people that, a nurse comes home at 11 o'clock at night and
Yeah,
she needs someplace to park. She's not gonna get a parking space on our streets.
yeah.
So she went down there with her little funny phone, could call and get picked up. I'm trying to get the mayor to have a shuttle for those people when that happens for the 125 case. But that's already settled. What I'm concerned about is the housing for people, a lot of people my age that are being pushed out of their apartments.
Yeah.
They have nowhere to go.
Yeah, we are supporting, as you can see, 2 of the housing. You know, the one in South Boston at McDevitt, that's a senior housing
saw
site.
that. Yeah.
North End, so we support, again, housing for veterans, seniors, homeless set-aside units. Mayor's Office of Housing has also done in some of the development. So it really making mixed use of developments. But again, the developer does have to come to us and want our funding.
And that would be the community leaders to go to the developer and...
Yeah, show up to those community meetings, because the developers have to come out and do community meetings when they're coming in the neighborhood with a development. And so they need, community approval and support. So yeah, definitely showing up to those meetings and really expressing what you want to see. Yeah.
You talked about the preservation, the community, Curly Community Center has just been renovated.
When's it opening?
That's the question.
So the beach is not going to be open for a while because of the
Clovers.
the little clovers.
I hear now.
They've been here for, I've been going there since I was 7 years old, so that's 70 some odd years. And we always had the clovers in the corner, one section of the beach that we roped off every year, so it's nothing new. It's been going on for 100 years.
Can we send them down from Maine?
But now they're going a little, They're going a little crazy with the amount of space, so they've shut down the whole beach. But that's not my question. My question is, is it okay?
Sorry.
There's a tower, there's a clock tower. Just a thought of that being preserved.
Yeah, if it's a historical building and they're looking to preserve that,
That's historic building.
absolutely. We would have to check if it's on the state and national register. And again, I mean, we could definitely engage them about it. That we can do, like community spaces, community centers, if they're not
It's a small tower
aware.
that has to be preserved, put new clocks in it, the whole bit. I got involved with doing the custom house 100 years ago in Edison. I worked for them.
Yeah.
And they contributed the money to restore that,
Nice.
the clock tower of the downtown.
Yeah. That's definitely something we can.
So if I bug Eddie and Mike about that, they could tell me how to get that done?
Yeah, they can.
I'm assuming that's part of the program down there at the Curly.
Well,
it might be.
I tried getting it done, and what they did was the contractors went up and they painted it this ugly green.
Oh, really?
And they didn't do anything.
That was the
clock.
Well, they may
not.
They may not know about the restoration funds for CPA funds because we can restore it back to its original form.
We'll work on that with you.
Yeah. So the Walter Baker sign, for example, on the chocolate factory down there, like we helped restore that and get that lit back and restored that because that was a historical lighting and sign in that
Well, those are my
neighborhood.
2 questions, so I didn't cover any more.
Okay.
You don't have any ice cream yet, do you?
Chips.
I got some.
Good questions.
Yeah, those are really great questions.
I like that last one. Let's do it.
We're the piping.
Just to sidetrack your meeting one more time. So,
No, that's okay.
so I just updated the Indus Square Civic Association website, but the Curly Rec Center is offering limited tours as of June 15th with limited programming and classes starting June 20th. If you go to asca.news, you'll see it right on the front page. Then click for the full story, and I think
it's in the newspapers.
Are they going to let the L Street Running Club back in there? They got kicked out.
I wonder why.
They're probably not going back there.
Yeah, they'll always be a
So,
Yeah, I know.
this is kind of a strange question, but I kind of just thought about it. I feel as though insofar as the affordable housing, and I'm particularly interested in senior housing, so the Paraclete is the McDevitt one that you spoke of, which is wonderful. It'll be ready by the time I'm ready, so we're on a good matching point there. But I feel as though in a lot of ways that South Boston is handicapped insofar as being able to, and I don't think it's a bad thing or a good thing, it's just a statement. We don't have, particularly in City Point, a lot of development, like that large-scale development. The Edison plant is probably the biggest one. that we've seen thus far. We do have a PDA waiting to happen at some point in time. But even at 17%, it's not a lot of units. So I would like to see senior housing within City Point, Gate of Heaven, like I Street, H Street, up this way. So how can we do that insofar as a funding source if we don't have the opportunity or the decrement, depending on how you think about it, to deal with developers? Because they really are the biggest fund, like sourcing fund, you know what I mean? When they're putting up, 600 units, 300 units, but we don't have that type of building going on here currently in, like I said, from that area up. So where do we get funding, or does CPA look at different areas and say, well, they don't have this, like the Back Bay, for instance, or Beacon Hill?
Yeah. So again, projects development come into us. So it's kind of, when we put out the RFP, it's kind of what the things that we can support. Are you building X amount of units? Are you building homeless, like senior housing? So it's usually, sometimes developers already kind of have a plan and want to then create some of these units within what they want their development to be. So they would be coming into us for a funding source. Mayor's Office of Housing, they may do more of that work, of talking to developers about, can you create this type of housing? So that's definitely a conversation to have with the Mayor's Office of Housing.
So is that Sheila?
Yes,
okay.
Yes. We are just one of the funding sources. So like I said, a lot of the development funding, developers already kind of have their team together, plans together. They have an idea of what they're looking to build, and then they're coming into us for a funding source to help with deeper affordability.
It'd be fair to say you're potentially gap financing for small portions of these projects that meet your requirements.
That meet our requirements.
To affordability.
Yes.
And
yes.
When you say development, it's kind of getting back to that point.
Yeah.
Let's say I'm not a developer, but let's say I buy a 3-story building and I say I want to definitely offer low-income housing to seniors, because that's important to me.
Yep.
I mean, could I then, as a developer, go and apply and say, this is my project plan,
right?
Build, the bathrooms and
yeah. So again, working with Mayor's Office of Housing, sometimes they partner new developers with experienced developers. Sometimes they partner like a certain community with an experienced developer to kind of partner together to create something. So I want to say that is a possibility. It can happen, but they would kind of, if you needed the financing, talking to them first will kind of help you walk through what is actual, what can be done and what can't be done. But
more
it's
like the scenario.
Yeah. I mean, CDCs are developers. They also do developments as well. So CDCs are usually always the ones doing affordable housing kind of developments.
Right.
So you can partner with the CDC. So I don't want to say no to any possibilities, because I think anything could potentially happen if you get the right group of people together with great ideas and finding the right funding sources to make something happen. But it just takes a lot of approvals. So there's many steps, and really talking to the experienced folks around that is what it really takes to get like a project done.
Your theory may fit better with mass development at the state level that exists for that specific purpose.
Yes.
I wrote down Courtney's name. She's part of the preservation.
Courtney Whelan?
So I'm talking about the tower that would be something to go through.
Yes, Courtney and Jillian Lang are two.
And they work out of City Hall?
Yes. No, our consultants are actually remote, but they do come into the city and do site visits and do virtual meetings with everyone. A lot of it, we work remote and in the office, so we do a lot of site visits. We come out and visit a lot of sites and talk to folks about, to get an idea of projects. So we are really out and about, and we monitor. So also, I forgot to say, we monitor the 293 projects that you are. So not only are we engaging and bringing in new projects, we monitor the projects that are currently being done for the 24 months. So we're checking in monthly with all the projects. I help manage a lot of the open space and recreation projects with Rachel, and Courtney and Julian take on a bulk of take on all of the historic preservation projects. And our goal is just really completing projects and getting them over to our compliance manager so she can monitor them to ensure that they're staying maintained and really up to date with what we funded.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Courtney Woodham.
Yes. Any other questions for it?
I have to take off, but I just want to say this was incredibly helpful and informative, and thank you.
Thank you. I feel there's some tough questions, so I hope
You did well.
I just have one final question.
Yeah. Are you sure?
Are you serious?
I haven't seen any proposal in the city for building apartment buildings for trans people, because apartment building that only has trans people is a safe space for them, which they are, they're being attacked across the country. If some developer wanted to build an apartment building for trans people, could they apply for some of these loans?
So I want to say, I don't know if you heard about the William Barton Rogers in Hyde Park. So that is a LGBTQ senior housing development that was actually approved through, and CPA gave funding towards that middle school that's being turned into this housing. So there are housing that is a form of senior housing that's being created for that community within Hyde Park. So yes, there are scenarios that's one that I've seen, and CPA has supported funding in that development.
But that is for senior citizens. What about the younger?
Again, it could be a possibility. This one went through. It was. I would also caution, like, there are also fair housing laws. So you can build for certain folks, but you also have to allow it to a larger group of the public as well. Sure. So I'm sure there's fair housing laws around what can be done and how you make it an open space for all people. But I don't know of any off the top of my head in the city of Boston. But I'm sure there may be ideas around kind of creating those spaces, I'm sure, and those type of development for
that sounds like a Sheila Dillon question as well.
Yeah,
right?
It does. But I can speak to the project that did happen in Hyde Park that CPA supported. So again, I can only speak for CPA.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming out.